I've been trying to solve the riddle.
So this is probably the most rarest HPA engine you've never heard of. This is a Madbull 470 CO2 drop-in gearbox. From what I can tell, it came out roughly 17 years ago, from 2024. And the main thing that they were going for it was a mechanical CO2/HPA engine. This is not a complete engine, obviously, but some key designs had the option to run a line to the grip, and could use CO2 capsules in the grip or run it out the back into the stock. And I think they might have had some CO2 capsules for the stock, either like 28 or 33 gram CO2 capsules, or maybe that was the intended idea. It was a semi-auto only gearbox or system, assuming it was working right. There is a video of it going full auto, but to my knowledge, that is one that is malfunctioning. It worked mechanically. These pegs sticking out would hold most likely the sears, and I believe the trigger used a standard AEG M4 trigger, or version 2 trigger, although I'm not for sure. This does have the cover plate that would cover it, but I believe my friend has it since this is his. I also believe that this HPA line is not an original or hose fitting, because it sticks out way too much. So I believe that's been changed. Top, it did have, or to charge it, basically, you'd have the charging handle interact with this, and so you could cock it back. And on the bottom, when you cocked it back, the bolt would latch onto a sear. It's a open bolt system. The nozzle stays to the rear. And some things that I forgot to cover in the upcoming kind of more disassembled version is that the rear screw interfaces with this steel end cap, and that the top of the bolt, it has a exhaust port where, since there's an O-ring based on the bolt, where from the pressure returning the bolt back to lock onto the sear, that's obviously where the pressure would escape from after a certain distance. And that is about it. It's a funky system that never really caught on, and for some relatively good reasons. I believe they had really horrible efficiency, along with, since they mainly came out as CO2 first, they had pretty high FPS, and I think the rough intended target audience was as kind of semi-auto DMRs, semi-realistic, kind of gas gun for the cheap that you could convert an already AG. And it also has cutouts for the older Tokyo Marui upper receiver design that would lock into the lower, instead of the more modern ones that don't use any of the rear receiver pins, or receiver pin locking mounts. And yeah, that's about it. Cool, old, kind of pretty rare system, but probably pretty good that it died. Would be interesting to know if any other companies that are using mechanical systems, if they ever had this as a reference and used it for any rough basis. But yeah. So here are the internals a little bit. The rear of the cylinder, basically just standard steel end cap. Nothing too special. It uses a spring that basically keeps the bolt forward. The bolt, this is the charging handle or peg, I guess I would say. It just screws into the bolt. So you put the bolt in, then screw it. And the nozzle is just a basic spring holding it in the rearward position. No O-ring, flat surface. The forward end cap holding the nozzle in has a O-ring at the base and is just threaded. Internally, it has what looks like a brass CO2 valve. And from what I can gather, the bolt face here might have been dremeled down, since it does look very not finished, but it's hard to say. But basically, from what I can gather, is that you'd cock it, the bolt would engage with the sear on the rear end, and then once you pull the trigger and release the sear, the spring would force the bolt forward and basically hit the valve and release some level of air, and the air would push the nozzle forward against the spring pressure, loading a BB, and then basically firing. And then it looks like I'm guessing it would probably be on kind of like a non-blowback system, where so it basically kind of hits the valve, but then it bounces kind of off to close the valve again. And then once the hammer or the bolt has kind of bounced off and the valve closes, then the spring pressure from the nozzle resets the nozzle, and you you would basically the next round would chamber. And actually, now that I'm saying that, the bolt does have an O-ring on it, and it might not fully work on that. It might work kind of like a gas blowback to some level, where you have some level of sealing in the bolt to basically force it back to re-engage with the sear, since it would still be under the spring tension. As you can see where the valve line would go, it doesn't look like the valve has been placed correctly, since there's no hole. So the air or CO2 would basically just not go in at all. I wasn't able to get the valve out, but it doesn't fully matter. The concept's still there. And then it just has a pin holding the valve in place, or keeping it from shooting out. And that's about it.
There also appears to be two different versions of the Madbull 470 gearbox. This picture I found online shows, I believe, the first version with the brass front end caps, or front and back end caps, whereas my friend's one and this picture shows the steel end caps, front and back. You can also see that the efficiency of this was pretty bad at 50 to 100 shots. And you can see that the grip insert where you'd put the CO2 would be. This X-ray photo is interesting in that you can see what looks like maybe a copper or a brass pipe for the gas flow, and that the sear looks to be a single bar instead of like a 2 or 3 stage sear.
It started yesterday.
Is it still here on my screen?
Open a bottle
Yep.
today. You'll feel
Okay.
the decadence and love the taste. That's what makes Pavilion
Should
a
it?
world of difference.
Empty? The other one? Okay. Shoot it. Yeah. Okay. Charge it. Okay.
And graphics have come up with a neat way to